don't know if we might have to shoot her a quick message or something. Yes. All right, thank you. Definitely appreciate it, and thank you guys for joining. And I'm sorry. Before we kick it off, if we can just have, if you're not speaking, it is good to just put yourself on mute. We will be able to answer any questions or anything you have at the end. We are live streaming this too, by the way. So that's another thing. But we'll focus on the Zoom presentation today. Mine will be about 30 minutes maximum. I don't like to go too long with the content. But I'll just be sharing with you guys some relevant information that you guys should know. So let's quickly start with the agenda. So today I'll give you guys an introduction of who I am, what it is that I do, and why exactly I'm speaking to you guys today. We'll talk about the CARES Act that was passed last month and all the different components of it, some things to look forward to. I'll even give you guys a bonus as to what to expect over the next few weeks or so as to what's coming out. Then we'll talk about unemployment. So specifically how you can, or what to look forward to with unemployment. I know a lot of self-employed individuals are on the call today. So I'll give you guys some very specific information as to what you need to know with that. And I'm sure our, my co-speaker will also speak on that too, as far as some specifics. And then we'll talk about the stimulus check that came out. So those are being released and they're being phased. They're being sent in phases. We'll talk about retirement in case you have some retirement savings and you need to leverage that either for living or also for investment purposes. For those with student loans, we'll just do a quick recap of what happened with the student loans. And then we'll talk about business relief, so all the different loan programs that you can take advantage of. And then last but not least, we'll go through some questions. So 2 ways to ask a question. Post it in the chat box or just unmute yourself and ask a question. We will have a formal Q&A. So for now, leave your questions in the chat box. And then at the end, if you feel more comfortable just unmuting yourself and asking, that would be greatly appreciated as well. So who am I? My name is Jeff Badu. I'm a licensed certified public accountant. I am originally from Ghana. So I was born and raised in Ghana, moved to the U.S. when I was 8 years old. I'm a University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign graduate, got a bachelor's and a master's degree in accountancy, and went on to work at PricewaterhouseCoopers or PwC. I'm a parallel entrepreneur as well as a wealth multiplier. I own a company called Badu Enterprises LLC, where I'm the founder and the CEO. And essentially, Badu Enterprise LLC is a multinational conglomerate in the finance industry. We provide a suite of financial services. Our marquee company is Badu Tax Services LLC, which does tax preparation, planning, and representation for individuals and businesses, such as yourself. So we do that across all 50 states in the U.S., and we are also global. We operate in about 10 different countries at the moment. I'm also the Badu Investments LLC, which is primarily my real estate investment company, which does multifamily. We buy properties, so multifamily anywhere from 4 to 20 units on the south side of Chicago, and we lease it to people that need housing. And we help them find vouchers and things of that nature to subsidize that housing. I'm also very passionate about financial literacy. That's the main reason why I'm here today. I'm the president of the Badu Foundation, which will soon be launched, but we just provide financial literacy education all across the country. So let's talk about the CARES Act. So the CARES Act was passed on Friday, March 27, 2020, and there was an additional package that was passed last Friday as well. So one thing about this presentation, you will be able to leave with action items. So you will be able to act immediately right after this presentation. Right after you hear this information, you can start acting. It's a $2 trillion emergency relief package that basically provides stimulus or provides programs and funding specifically to individuals and businesses. There will be more money coming soon. So instead of the word may, I would change that to more money will be coming soon. There will be a second stimulus package that will be passed pretty soon. Right now, Congress is taking a bit of a break, but they will be back next week, hashing out the details and everything. So let's talk about unemployment. There was an additional $600 weekly benefit that was passed as part of that CARES Act. So you do receive an additional $600 weekly benefit through July 31st, 2020. And I know there's a lot of confusion about that. But basically, for self-employed individuals, you have to wait. In the state of Illinois, this is what they released. They said that you can go on a website and apply for unemployment. However, you may not get approved or you may not get eligible until May 11th of 2020. So May 11th is the official date where the state of Illinois will have a system where you can actually go in there and see your unemployment benefits. But basically for self-employed, you can expect about $600 per week. And it's also backdated to the date you were unemployed, or the date the COVID-19 pandemic began, essentially. So there's a lot of confusion with that. Unfortunately, the reason why we have to wait so long is because the state of Illinois systems are a bit outdated. And so we do have to wait. If you are somebody with a W-2 or you're not self-employed, then whatever benefits you are getting now, they will tack on an additional $600 weekly benefit, and that's backed by the federal government. And then if you are collecting unemployment, there's an additional 13 weeks of federally funded unemployment benefits through the end of 2020. So in case you might have run out or something happened, you get an additional 13 weeks that's backed by the federal government. So the Congress, essentially. Unemployment benefits through 2020. So this is big, but for many who would not otherwise qualify, as we know, usually self-employed individuals do not qualify for unemployment because we don't have unemployment insurance. But since this is such a big pandemic, this is a global pandemic that's affecting so many people, they are allowing an additional group of people to be included, including independent contractors such as taxi drivers, Uber, ride sharers, life insurance agents, anybody who falls in the self-employed category, and even part-time workers as well. And I did leave a note here, it's not fully functional yet, but as of May 11th, at least I can only speak for the state of Illinois, my state. At least in the state of Illinois, May 11th, 2020 is the date where you can go on an unemployment website and officially claim your benefit. I'm sorry, for those that didn't catch it, that's May 11, 2020 is the date where you can officially go on a website and claim your unemployment benefit if you are self-employed. Now, let's talk about the stimulus check. And remember, if you guys have any questions, please post it in the chat box. For those that haven't used Zoom, there is a chat feature at the bottom of your screen. You can go in there, type in your question. If you're on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that, you can also go in there and type your question. And then at the end, we will allow people to unmute themselves and actually ask formal questions. But the stimulus check, basically of $1,200 or $2,400 if you're married filing jointly, plus a $500 for each qualifying child that's under the age of 17. So if you file a tax return and you claim a child that's under 17, you'll get an additional $500. If they're over 17, that's where the problem comes. You won't get any money for that dependent. It's only for basically qualifying child or children that's on your tax return. So a way around this, what some people are doing, if you haven't filed your taxes yet, they're basically removing their dependents and letting them file independently, which it could make sense. But one thing to note is that in 2020, you will be required to do a reconciliation, meaning that on your 2020 tax return that you file next year, you will actually have to report and validate the information. So you may either have to owe back the stimulus check, right? If you did not qualify, let's say your income was over the threshold, the $75,000 threshold, or maybe one of your dependents was removed from your tax return. So it's a bit confusing exactly how the IRS is going to do it. But if you qualify for 2018 and 2019, you should be good. But you technically have to qualify for 2020 because this is a 2020 tax credit. It's not a 2019. So it's an advancement of a tax credit, meaning they'll still put the money in your bank account, but you have to do a reconciliation on your 2020 tax return. What happens if you don't file your 2020 tax return? You might have to pay back that money. So that is one very important thing to note. You're not off the hook just because they sent the money to your bank account. You may have to pay this money back if you were not truly eligible for the money in the first place. Most people that are eligible in 2018 and 2019 will probably be eligible for 2020 anyway. But to officially get the money now, if you need the money deposited into your bank account now, you must have at least a 2018 tax return on file. And what I tell my clients, hey, if you're going to file 2018, why not just do 2019 as well? 2019 return is used for the calculation if it is on file. The money is phased out if your adjusted gross income is over $75,000. And if you're filing jointly, it's $150,000. If you're filing head of household, it's $112,500. A few things to note: if you have not received your check yet, and I know a lot of questions will come from this. I probably will have to repeat myself at the end. If you have not received your check yet, it doesn't mean you will not be getting a check. It means the IRS they're taking their time. They need time to process your information, right? They might not have even processed your 2019 return yet. So they need some time. There's an article that I can send to you guys where they provide a timeline. They're going based off your income. So those in the lowest income bracket or adjusted gross income is the lowest, that's where they're starting. And then they're working their way all the way up to the 150,000 mark or so. And it could go all the way until September, right? You might not get a stimulus check until September. That is how serious this thing is. The reason why is because the IRS is very busy. This is tax season, right? So we're still in tax season. And then two, this is a global pandemic. They don't have a lot of people working. They just called back a lot of people to come back to work today. So yeah, hopefully they'll speed up the process, but they realize that they need to move fast. So some people have gotten their stimulus check. If you have a direct deposit and a 2018 return on file, you probably got your stimulus check 2 weeks ago. But if you have not, all hope has not been lost yet. Please just be patient. They will send you your money. Please do not call the IRS, right? They don't even take phone calls right now. There is a website. If you go to irs.gov, you can check on the status. If you see no information available, it means they have not processed your stimulus check yet. So you really have to be patient with the process. And thanks, Martin. Martin just posted the website on Facebook, so definitely appreciate that. For retirement, there's for those that have retirement money or retirement like 401k, IRA, there's a thing called the required minimum distributions or RMDs from employer-sponsored retirement plans and IRAs. But this would not be applicable. So once you hit age 72 and a half, it used to be 70 and a half. Now it's age 72 and a half. You no longer have to do the required minimum distributions or RMDs for 2020. So it's pretty complicated to explain. But if you have a traditional IRA or 401k, excuse me, you usually have to pull money out once you hit 72 and a half. But that requirement is not applicable for 2020 because the government understands people might need this money. And then the 10% early retirement penalty or early distribution penalty tax that would normally apply if you're age 59 or so or below 59 and a half is waived for retirement plan distributions of up to $100,000. So you can go into your retirement account and pull out $100,000 without any penalties. Now, one thing to not confuse is that you might have to pay taxes on that money still, but it's prorated. It will be prorated. So if you have a traditional 401k or IRA and you pull the money out, you might not get hit with the penalty, but you will get hit with the taxes though. So that's one thing they're not telling you. The penalty is waived, but the taxes themselves, since you already got a tax benefit when you withdrew or when you contributed the money to your 401k, it reduced your taxable income. So you have to pay the taxes at some point. So in this case, no penalty, but you still have to face the taxes. To be honest, I think this should be a last resort because retirement accounts have dropped in value because investment values have dropped, stock market has dropped. So this would not be a good time to be pulling from your retirement because you would just be losing money at that point. Now, if you really need it, or if you have a nice investment, maybe this is a good time to get into real estate. This is the time to go ahead and do that. Also, loans, you can usually take a loan of up to $50,000 in your retirement plan. Now it's been expanded to about $100,000. Up to the limit of about 50% of the balance that's in the vested balance in your retirement account. And then student loans, there's a 6-month automatic payment suspension of any student loan payments. So it's automatic, but what I tell my clients, I like to err on the side of caution at all times. I would still contact the Federal Student Loan Department, whether it be the U.S. Department of Education, and just say, hey, I heard about this 6-month automatic extension. I just want to make sure I'm good with that. Any auto pays, make sure they're turned off. And this is only if you need it. Hey, if you don't need it, continue making your payments on time. And they do waive things like interest and things of that nature. So I think those that should be taking advantage of this are those who truly cannot pay those student loans. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you can't work because of the pandemic and everything like that. But they did provide some relief. And I do applaud the government, by the way, for what they're doing as far as some of these programs. And I do see we do have a lot of participants today on the call. We got 73 people joining us. And then we got some folks on Facebook as well as Instagram. So I'm glad we're able to get a mass audience here so you guys can get this valuable information. And remember, there are 2 ways to ask a question. You can put it in the chat box, and we'll cover those at the very end of the presentation. Or at the end, you can also unmute yourself. Those are the folks on Zoom. But now let's talk about business relief. So they did provide some business relief when it comes to this. So I know most of our audience today are self-employed, whether it's a taxi, Uber, ride sharing. For one, there are payroll tax credits for retaining employees. So if you do have a traditional business and you hire an employee, you do get a payroll tax credit for retaining those employees. And that's usually done when you file your payroll, so your W-2 payroll tax return. Your payroll provider will issue you a credit if you let them know that, hey, your employees are sick because of COVID-19. If you cannot work, then also when you file your 2020 tax return, your self-employment taxes will be reduced. So you will get a credit from your self-employment taxes if you're not able to work. It's a pretty intense calculation, but you will get some sort of relief when it comes to the self-employment taxes. Now let's talk about, let's actually move to net operating loss, then we'll go back to SBA loans because that's a big part of today. But net operating loss rules have been expanded. So let's say you had a loss in 2019. You can go back to 2018, 2017, 2016, and use that loss that you have to offset any sort of taxes in the past, and you get a tax refund. You have to file a claim for a tax refund because what they're trying to do here is they're just trying to accelerate these payments. They want you to get more money in your pocket so that you don't have to file for unemployment. You don't have to do all these things that are depleting the economy. Last week we had 5.2 million people that filed for unemployment. And over the past month or so, it's been over 20 million people that filed for unemployment. And I can imagine that's not even including the self-employed individuals who haven't had the opportunity to file for unemployment yet. So that is one thing that I would like to note when it comes to that. And I do have to take so overall that is something that we do have to keep in mind with the net operating loss rules. But let's talk about the SBA loans really quick. So a few things before I even get into the topic of SBA, EIDL, and PPP. Here are a few things you have to do if you want to qualify for these loans. The first thing is you have to have a 2019 tax return on file. So if you have not filed your 2019 tax return yet, you do not qualify for EIDL or PPP. They're very, very upfront with that one. you must have a 2019 tax return. If you do have a 2019 tax return, if you're an S corporation or corporation, you must have payroll, meaning W-2. You must have had, whether it's yourself or your employees, you must have had payroll that was being ran through your company. So if you're an S corporation or C corporation and you are not running payroll, W-2 payroll, then you do not qualify for these loans. If you're self-employed, such as a taxi driver, Uber, rideshare, and you filed your 2019 tax return, you must have shown a profit. So there must have been a net profit on that business on your Schedule C in order to qualify. What they do is they take that profit, they divide it by 12, and basically multiply it by 2.5. That's the amount of the loan that you're eligible for, at least when it comes to the PPP. But let's get into the deep in-depth programs. We have about 3 minutes left, so I'll be ending my presentation in about 3 minutes. But EIDL, or Economic Injury Disaster Loan Emergency Advance, provides up to $10,000 loan advance to businesses. And independent, I do applaud the government once again. I always like to say this because we do live in America, the home of the free and the land of the brave. And I'm glad they were able to provide us with programs like this. But independent contractors and self-employed individuals do qualify for these loans. Traditionally, you don't qualify for these types of SBA loans unless you have a business, such as an LLC or an INC, and you had to be in a business for 2 years. But now they're expanding that program to self-employed and individuals. As long as you were self-employed as of 2019, then you can qualify. Businesses with less than 500 employees can qualify, and we all heard of the quote-unquote loophole that these bigger companies who have subsidiaries that have less than 500 employees were applying and getting the money, which is very well legal. You know, the U.S. is a country of systems, and systems do work in the U.S. So if you know and if you figured out the system, then you can get ahead in the United States of America. You must have tax returns and financials. So for those with a corporation, you have to have a balance sheet and a profit and loss or income statement. If you're Schedule C, you get away with this one. You don't have to have financials, but you do have to have a tax return. And you can apply the EIDL, SBA.gov. They just released the application or the reapplication today. So you can go on SBA.gov right after this, listening to this, and you can apply for the EIDL. It's up to a $10,000 grant that they give you. And it could be fully forgiven too, by the way. Next is the PPP, Paycheck Protection Program. Awesome program. I think this is one of the best things that they've come out with so far. It's basically a loan mainly to cover your payroll. Independent contractors and self-employed do qualify. Businesses with less than 500 employees also do qualify. The nice thing with this is that the loan payments can be deferred for up to 6 months. So you don't have to make any payment for 6 months. There's no collateral, personal guarantee, credit check, none of that stuff really required. So it's basically free money that the government is just about to throw to you. 1% interest loan with 2-year term. Loan will be fully forgiven if you use at least 75% of the money to payroll. And then the rest to interest on your mortgages, rent, utilities, things of that nature. So even if you're self-employed, right, you can still qualify for this loan. You just have to make sure your tax return has been filed and you had to have a net profit. So I know a lot of Uber and taxi drivers like to claim losses. Well, this is the time where it won't work out in your favor because you won't be qualified. And I guarantee you the money will run out by this Friday. Like, they will run out of money by this Friday. They might even run out of money by this Wednesday. So you do have to move fast, very, very fast. You can use, so the SBA.gov is a site to use for EIDL. And the PPP, you can use sites such as Lendio, Lendio. Once again, Lendio, Lendio. You can use sites like Kabbage, Kabbage. These are all great sites. You can go and apply. You can go through your local bank, but I would strongly advise you avoid doing that because they're swamped with applications right now. They're not taking any new people. So Lendio, Kabbage, those are great sites too. Those are the companies that we use for our firm, for our clients. So either through a bank or a private lender such as Lendio or Kabbage. So it is 11:30, and this is my contact information. Email is jb@badutaxservices.com. Once again, jb@badu, taxservices.com. You can contact me, 773-679-7198. These are our social media platforms. So yeah, you can reach out to me anytime, ask me any questions. Email is my preferred method of communication. Be more than happy to help you guys. And we also do, of course, file tax returns for people. So that's a big part of what we do. So I'll just go ahead and stop sharing the presentation now, and I'll let you guys take over.
Any assistance from the government, and I presume that you and I, if we have to ask things to go back to normal, we will be able. We prefer to go out there and fend for ourselves and our family. But now we are faced with this predicament. A lot of people, this is the first time we are applying for unemployment. So there's a lot of confusion involved in filing the application and getting whatever letter from IDES. A lot of people are finding it difficult to file this unemployment because this is the first time. And many people also have received mails from IDES rejecting them, that they are not eligible to file for unemployment. And sometimes you get a letter saying that you run out of your own time, you cannot file. My advice to every one of us that are filing for the first time, remember that the system originally was not meant for us to file. Originally, if we file for unemployment, you are going to be denied. The reason is this: we are people who don't have W-2 forms. What do I mean by that? Some people might be confused to be able to know what W-2 form is all about. It means that while you are not gainfully employed, and that let's assume that you apply for a job and you're offered a place for $15 an hour, $16 an hour. Before you receive your payment, there is usually a deduction from there that is being made that goes to the federal and the state government. In that case, it comes out that you have a W-2 form. But if you are independent contractors, small business owners, gig workers, or something like that, what you get is 1099. The 1099, what it means is this: whatever amount of money that you are generating or you're making, there is no deduction from there to pay into the government. In that case, you have a 1099. So you and I don't even have any record. The only time you pay your taxes is the only time you pay to the government, and that is why it is 1099. So usually, these unemployment benefits are originally designed for people with W-2 forms. So every one of us that applies now, definitely, what the system is going to check out for is people who was originally scheduled for that unemployment. So the system will definitely deny you and me you will get a letter that is saying that you are denied. You've run out of your chances or something like that. I tell you, you don't give up hope. If you listen to the first speaker, he tries to explain that it is supposed to, the system will start recognizing you and me from May 11th. And the meeting we had earlier on with the Cab Drivers United and ASME, Meg also explained to us that after getting in contact with the director of Illinois Department of Unemployment, and they said that we have to wait for 7 to 8 weeks before they can be able to update the system and be able to recognize. And I also encourage people, if you have already filed and you get such a letters, then it is not the end of the world. What they are saying is this: they are going to, when the time comes, that's around May 11th, the people who have already filed will be shifted into the new system to be assessed. So we will be getting information, a positive information, starting from May 11th and above. A lot of people also are having some other questions. There are people who, during this process, worked in different quarters. What I mean by that is this: some people drove Uber and Lyft, some others drove cab, some also did food delivery. And these are people that have 3 different 1099. Now I'm going to ask my accountants to be able to help us when it comes to that. And the question is going to be, if such a person comes out, what is he or she going to do? Are they going to file the unemployment with 3 of their 1099, or are they going to file with 1? I'm sure that he will be able to help us to answer that question. But the most important thing I also gather from his presentation also is this: is asking us, there are some loans that we are qualified to file, but we have to do that fast because the money runs out so fast. And from what he's saying, he's suspecting that by the end of this week, these monies will be running out. So if we can be able to go to all these sites and be able to apply, let us just apply. If you get it, you get it. If you don't get it, there is no problem. But it's going to pay for us to apply so that we can see what we are going to do. Another thing I also ask people, and I tell people, please be patient enough. Be patient. Another question also for accountants is this: when it comes to the stimulus check. I know some of my friends have also gotten their check. They got their check because of some of them direct deposit. But those of us, including myself, that is expecting us through the mail, have not been able to get that. And again, there is a platform where they said you can go over there to check your check. Many times myself, I go over there and they tell me that there's no information on file. Now the question is this: what do people like me, what do I have to expect? I also would like to have some answers to that. I encourage us to be patient. This is the first time that we are applying for this, and I'm sure that things are going to work out. And every one of us should stick with one another and encourage one another. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Namde, for that.
Yeah, I think that would be a great time to maybe go through the questions. I do see some coming in the chat box. And really quickly, somebody asked, what's the CARES Act? It's the act that was passed on March 27, 2020 that provides additional funding for individuals and businesses who may have experienced reduction in income due to the COVID-19. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So, what do you do if you have multiple businesses or multiple 1099s? Just apply once. So I would just apply once. I mean, the thing is, they're only expecting to send out about $600. So if you're self-employed and you don't have a traditional W-2, then it's $600 per week essentially. So for that, that would be the maximum benefit. So whether you have two, three, one, you would go on the IDES website, Illinois Department of Employment Security. You would apply and you would just put in your information. Maybe you can use the 1099 that you maybe use the most. You go on the site, you apply, see what happens, and yeah, if they approve you, I can imagine they're only approving people for one. They wouldn't necessarily approve for three or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at the chat right now, so we can probably go down a list of questions. All right. Do you mind reading them off? Yeah. So let me see. Yeah, so I mean, so the first question is, what about dependents who are over 17? If you claim them as a dependent, they do not qualify for a stimulus check. So the $500 extra, they do not receive. And the logic behind this is basically there's a non-dependent tax credit that you receive, or a non-17-year-old and older, basically a non-child tax credit that you receive. That's $500 when you file your tax return anyway. So their logic here is you're basically already getting your $500, so they're not going to send you an additional $500 on top of that. So what some people are doing is they're saying, okay, dependent, well, maybe you guys are in college now. Maybe it's time to consider being independent. And so you file your taxes on your own, basically. Because as part of the 2017 tax reform, they essentially made it not as advantageous to claim anybody who's over 17 anyway. The most you can get from that person is a $500 tax credit. So to answer your question, you do not get a stimulus check for that dependent who's over 17 if you claim them on your taxes. And then next question, it says, I've received the UI funding from the states, and it says I'm eligible, which is what everybody's seeing, for the unemployment. Do I have to file another application on May 11th? I mean, I don't believe so, but I would do so anyway, just to be safe. I would possibly reapply, maybe contact them and say, because right now nobody knows what's about to happen. That's unfortunately, the system is not set up, because who knows, they might have glitches in the system on May 11th. I mean, the city or the state of Illinois system is physically not set up for you to file for unemployment as a self-employed individual yet. But they're saying by May 11th, and they can of course postpone that date at their discretion. Hopefully it would work at that time. So I would say if you, I would go ahead and reapply anyway. Worst case, they might deny you, and just accept the first application, because it is first come, first serve. And I heard that some states are running out of unemployment because over 20 million people filed for unemployment over the past month, which is a very scary number. Very scary. I mean, I would, so here's the thing. I would first contact the state of Illinois Department of Employment Security on May 11th and specifically ask them, what are the steps? Because they're the ones that tell what are the steps if I've already applied and I put it in my application that I'm self-employed, right? So they would be able to direct and say, okay, well, go, because the thing is, they haven't released instructions yet. That's the main part of this. They have not physically released those instructions. So my advice is to first contact them. Worst case scenario, submit a new application, and then immediately maybe follow up with them on a daily basis and see, okay, where's my application? What's the status? Do I have to do something with my old application? Because right now there's a lot of unknowns with that, unfortunately. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And yes, everybody qualifies for unemployment, so anybody who's self-employed, and everybody also qualifies for the PPP loan. However, you must have a 2019 tax return filed in order to qualify for these programs. And also for the PPP or the Paycheck Protection Program, you have to show a net profit to be eligible for the loan. So those are some of the requirements for the PPP. And EIDL, it's more so that one you have to have your 2019 taxes filed. There's no real stipulation on, like, you have to demonstrate that your business lost money in a way, or your business is losing money. So that one they haven't provided too much of guidance, but I would go ahead and apply anyway on the SBA.gov website for the EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance Program. But for the PPP, they're very, very strict and specific that you have to have a net profit, or if you're a business that's like an S corporation or a corporation, you have to have payroll. So you have to have W-2 payroll that's formal on paper, nothing under the table or anything like that, but actual W-2 payroll that was ran through the government. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, so if they have a basically the way it works with stimulus checks, if you're under the age of 17, or if you're over the age of 17 and somebody claimed you as a dependent, you don't qualify for the stimulus check. They've made that very, very clear. But if you file as an independent where nobody's claiming you, then you do potentially qualify.